Yes, guys, good morning. How are you? I hope you're all happy and healthy, doing the things that you love. It is Friday. Happy Friday. It's just before 12:30. And look who I found for a cheeky little hour 10. We're going to talk about all things Tottenham, all of the latest news regarding managerial searches. I'm here with Barnaby Slater, unbelievable content creator, and one of my favorite people to have a chinwag with. We don't do it too often. We need to do it more, Barnaby. How are you, my man?
I'm very well. The last time we did it was on my crazy idea that I would do a live stream until Thomas Frank got sacked. But unfortunately, that idea was 3 weeks ago and we got a good result that night. And so I had to stop because I was so tired of everything. I was exhausted of all of it.
Yeah.
But we knew.
Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say we knew 4 months ago that he should be sacked, and it's completely ridiculous that it's even 3 weeks ago he still wasn't sacked. But at least it's happened now.
Yeah, at least it's happened now, but the damage might be done. The whether or not there's enough time to turn it around, we're going to find out. We're going to find out. Guys in the chat, you know what to do. Smash the like button for me if you can. Straight out of the traps, hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Notification button should be squeezed. Comments should be dropped thick and fast. We are also, of course, sponsored by OK Jersey. You know the score and the door on that particular note. Get over to OK Jersey, search for OK Jersey, whatever you're looking for. Jeremy jackets, if you're looking for your latest in the new versions, the old school, the retro, the hybrid, all those sorts of things. Plus, you have now the latest updates for all of the international teams that are going to be in the World Cup. So if that's your thing, then go and get yourself over to OK Jersey, 8% off at checkout using code Sean. I'd also appreciate everybody who's watching this right now and on the playback. If you have got the screen in front of you, to click on Spurs Talk Show here, click on the Barnaby link, get over to Barnaby Slater, give him a sub. What are you on the march to now? Is it 25k?
No, 20k. But 20K. I'm sure you've noticed this a little bit as well. The apathy within the Tottenham fan community, and I'll include myself in the apathy in terms of having to watch Tottenham, means that not a lot of people have been loving watching Spurs content recently. So it's been a very slow build from 19,000 to 20,000. But I'm about 550 off 20,000 subs, which would be a big thing for me. So, and any help much appreciated.
Yeah, and when you do get to 20k, you get a little algorithm boost as well. So get everyone get over there and fresh Barnaby, exactly, fresh Barnaby. He's got his hair cut. He's been moisturising the skin this morning. Look at the difference. This is a guy that wakes up early and gets to work. This is a guy that was up late last night, streaming and arguing, screaming and shouting with Stel and Johnny and Lubo, and then goes to bed about 1 o'clock, a little bit tipsy, and then wakes up at 5 o'clock. I'm tired. I've got sleep in my eyes. It is what it is. It is what it is, as they say. Barnaby,
yeah.
Where do we start, mate? Let's start with Thomas Frank. I haven't actually caught your like a chinwag on it. You did mention there, obviously, that it was maybe 4 weeks overdue. When do you think the kind of nail, the final nail, should have been inserted? Was it the Arsenal game before?
Well, no, I honestly think about 4 months. I put first as a title on a video of mine early, I think, to mid-October. I said, we are going to be relegation candidates, and people screamed at me in the comments and accusing me of rage bait. But that's when I first saw that the players weren't having him. They weren't interested in playing for this guy at all. And I'll be honest, like it wasn't before that, because I didn't take the, I feel like a lot of people are using hindsight now to say, oh, it was clear when Jed Spence and Van der Ven walked past him. I didn't see that necessarily. I thought they were like pissed off at that point because of the game, but actually, it wasn't that long after that where it was like, no, that they're not having this. And I think for me, it's as simple as these are players who are designed to play football on the ground, who want to play, better football than Thomas Frank was allowing them. They don't want to just hit channel balls, hit direct balls, hit long balls that they have to aimlessly chase. And it was clear to me, 3-4 months ago, and it should have been after the West Ham game. Of course, it should have been before that, after the Fulham game, even at home. And of course, we can even go back as far and say the performances in the Chelsea and the Arsenal game. I mean, the performances in the Chelsea and the Arsenal game were exactly the same as that performance Nuno Espirito Santo had for Spurs at the Emirates, where we had no midfield. And we talked a little bit off air. We talked a little bit off air about how you and I used to be a little bit like, be careful what you wish for when you get rid of Daniel Levy. Well, what I would say is, one of the things that a lot of fans who hated Daniel Levy would say, he sacked managers too early. But I think he would have sacked this clown 5 months ago. and we would not be in this spot. Now, I'm not saying I've never been like Levy in or Levy out. I've just been like, be careful. It's not as simple as it seems. But I'll tell you what, we would not be 5 points off relegation if Daniel Levy was chairman now. But look, anyway, these guys are learning on the job, and now they've just got an unbelievably huge decision to make. And as you've got in your title, it seems to me now that they're looking, or the reports coming out of Sky Sports in the last hour have been they're definitely looking for an interim. But weirdly, they're also interviewing long-term potential managers as well. So there seems, and I don't want to, just to finish off my slight rant here, I don't want to give any credit to Mad Marinakis of Nottingham, but he just sacked his guy and he got a guy in. Now, I don't know if the ex-Wolves Ross Pereira is the right guy for them, but at least he's made a decision and he clearly had some kind of plan. But these clowns, they're just skipping from one disaster to the next, and it is genuinely frightening. If you think about what Newcastle were like when they got Shearer in and got relegated. If you think further back to Leeds when Terry Venables was in there, Peter Reid, and they ended up getting relegated. It can happen. And a lot of people talk, don't they? And a lot of people talk, don't they, about how, Aston Villa and Nottingham Forest are bigger clubs than Spurs because they've won the European Cup. But in the same conversation, I've seen people saying if Tottenham got relegated, it would be the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened in the history of football. And I'm like, well, you can't marry those two things up because those clubs have been relegated. So if you're saying that, then Tottenham are a bigger club than them. But we are drifting. But one thing I'll say is I'm hopeful that if they get a man in who just says to the players, just play with some, enjoy yourselves, play with a little bit of freedom, then we should be able to get 3 wins, Sean, surely.
Yeah, 3 wins is hopefully all it will need. Although I have just got a sneaking suspicion. Like you're looking at the way, it's not just the results recently that West Ham have put together, who are obviously the danger team, but also the style in which they've played. Ever since they brought in Tati and Pedro, is it the other guy? They just seem to be refreshed in their forward line options. It looks like Bowen is enjoying playing with
that guy. Fernandez is a good player as well, isn't he?
Matheus Fernandes is a baller, absolute baller. When he moved to from Southampton, I said at the time, he's going to be a phenomenal player. West Ham have really got a great talent there, and he's looking like, his ability to shoot from distance with confidence and accuracy is absolutely phenomenal. But I am worried about not just the form, but the function of West Ham's performances over the last 3 or 4 weeks. It does look like it looks like they're chasing a European spot more than they're trying to save themselves from relegation. It's not like they're digging in trying to sort of get through a game to try to get enough points out. It looks like they're playing with refinement. And that to me is a concern because I've watched Tottenham for the last, well, I don't know if you know this, Barnaby, but on the Spurs 5 and on the Football Link that I work, we have prediction leagues. Obviously, we have to predict all of the results, but Tottenham are obviously included in that every single. I haven't predicted a Tottenham win since mid-December. And I haven't been wrong because we haven't.
Been right.
I've been right on top of the league, and I don't know where we go. Obviously, the injury crisis is the injury crisis. Now, I can tell from your, I love the way that your mind works with the logic there. Regarding the Aston Villa story. I'm always seeking out whether I don't care where you land, just show me you're working out. And a lot of people don't really have logic and sort of consistency within the working. And the people that are saying that if Tottenham were to get relegated, it would be worse than Aston Villa. Yet at the same time, Villa are a bigger club than Tottenham. It doesn't square, right? So. No. I hear you on that. I also hear you that it can happen, and maybe we'll get fortunate, and there's just 3 teams that are worse than us. It might not necessarily be West Ham. It might be Palace. It might be Forest. It might be.
Sorry to break in, but that's what I was going to say. I have a feeling that actually Leeds and potentially Palace, just on the basis that those players, they're not playing for Glasner in the way they were previously because they know he's leaving. So I think Leeds. I don't think Forest or West Ham are going to get relegated. That's the thing. I think they're going to find their way out of it somehow. Although I'll admit I'm less sure about Forest now that they've got rid of Dyche. That was, that's mad from Mad Marinakis. But you know what he's like. It wouldn't. Yeah. I know Leeds have been on a good run, but I wonder if their good run has almost come too early and that they could get dragged back in. But like I said, I don't.
Very hard to beat at home, Leeds. Very hard to beat at home. And to go away to Chelsea and to fight back from 2-0 down to come back to 2-2 shows real resolve. Yeah. I look at these teams around us. I look at West Ham's performances. I look at Leeds' home form and their fight away from home. And the fact that they don't have that many injuries. They have enough options to rotate. Part of the consequences of having 13 fit players is that the players that are available have to play more often. I'm still running the conspiracy theory that there is an unspoken acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, that the artificial pitch underneath Tottenham Hotspur has problems that they're not prepared to admit to the fan base or the world, because they would have to admit they've got a $1 billion white elephant that's going to consistently harm the first team. No one wants to hear it, but I genuinely can't find a variable that's inconsistent with our system. That isn't.
I guess it wouldn't be the NFL pitch. It might be the fact that this is a removable pitch and it's the kind of technology underneath it. But the NFL pitch is so far beneath the. I just think the fact there's only
6 inches of sort of turf with synthetic weave before you get to the trays, before you get to the girders.
Yeah, the trays. That's what I'm talking about. I don't know.
Trays. I'm not an expert in medicine, and I'm certainly not an expert in artificial or infrastructure. But I'm a conspiracy theorist. And by the way, guys, if you are watching, check out Rabbit Hole Ramblings. You'll see the link in the chat in a minute. Can
I just ask on that front, just because my mum's so clear on it? Are you sure that that's Jeffrey Epstein alive and well in Israel? My mum sent me the picture, and I was like, that looks like A, it looks like Jim Carrey, B, it looks like Harrison Ford from The Fugitive, and C, it looks like every tramp I've ever seen. But she is stone cold sure that is Jeffrey Epstein in Israel. So I've got to agree. I've got to believe it.
Well, listen, I think it's been debunked as AI, those videos, or the pictures themselves. However, in every video, there's like hundreds of pictures of that person now. Like, no one spotted this man for 8 years. And then all of a sudden, just as the Epstein files are released, suddenly there's like 6 videos in the week in different clothing. But in every single video, that man is flanked by people that are clearly IDF soldiers. You can spot an IDF guy, just like you can spot a Fed from a mile away. You know, like the absolute. You've got
to get my mum. You've got to get my mum on your Ramblings channel for sure.
Bring her on, mate. Bring her on. The females are females love a conspiracy. Once they get their teeth stuck into it, they just absolutely they destroy it. So yeah, bring her on, mate. Absolutely fantastic. With regards the injury crisis at Tottenham, though, I do think that we have to just chew on it for a second. I don't want to dwell too much because I've dwelled on it for the last few days, but with regards to Tottenham's relegation plight, I do think that is something. Again, don't really care about Thomas Frank. I'm with you. I never really bought into him. I think that his inability to motivate, to invoke, to get any kind of buy-in from the fan base is a problem. You know, Ange Postecoglou, think what you want about him. You know, he came in and said, "It's who we are, mate," and a lot of people loved that. You know, I always win trophies in my second year. I told him they didn't listen. He will always go down. There's always going to be a section of the fan base that will always want him back, that will yearn after him, because forget about all the things that he said that didn't come true, but he at least had that salesman spiel. Then you pivot to what might be next in Pochettino. And when asked 3 months before, you know, the World Cup at home in America, he's asked on a podcast, what trophy would you like to win more than any other? And he basically said that the Premier League with Tottenham. You know, you can tell he's always going to be a winner in the hearts and minds of the average Tottenham fan. So Thomas Frank didn't do that. Thomas Frank's first press conference was, one thing's for sure, we're going to lose games. You know, he might be honest and sincere to a fault, because it's true, but it doesn't go any way to inspire people. And if he's saying those to the fans, what's he saying inside the dressing room? I think you're right. I think the players certainly didn't buy into him, weren't falling for that kind of spiel. But at the same time, Barnaby, you know, he has had a horrendous injury crisis, and it's only gotten worse. The fact that he didn't get anybody in the January window, whether he shot himself in the foot in that regard by believing that he was going to be given enough patience until the summer and saying, well, I don't want us to sign 5-year contracted players that I don't really, see the value in the long term. You have to live and die by those decisions, and he's obviously died on that hill. But the injuries have been a disaster, and will be the same thing for whoever's coming in this weekend or Monday. They're going to have to contemplate the next 3 months with, I'd say, fewer players than, like, if you look at the squad right now and you were to say, is the squad going to grow in available players, or is it going to shrink further?
Yeah.
I would say it's probably going to shrink further, because that's the trend at the moment, right? Where would you be with that?
Well, one thing I would say about injuries, do you remember, I think I'm a bit older than you, but basically back in the 90s when we were of such an injury-laden club, we always were. Darren Anderson was always the picture boy for how many injuries Spurs would get. And he was very regularly injured, except for when he had to play for England in international tournaments. But what we found is that when managers would come in who the players were kind of up for, suddenly these players would sometimes kind of jump off the treatment table, and that can happen a little bit. Now, obviously, what we've got is very unlucky is a lot of ACLs in Maddison and now Odegaard. And Kulusevski's patella injury is basically an unheard of injury, and some people don't recover from that at all. But it would not surprise me. What I'm trying to say is, it would not surprise me if some of these kind of lesser injuries, impact injuries, muscle injuries, if they suddenly got fit quicker than they would have done if Thomas Frank was still here. So I'm kind of counting on that.
I heard you saying that the other day.
Yeah,
quite an interesting take. Yeah,
I'm counting on that a little bit. But also, I would also add this. I think the Odegaard one is a bit of a killer. But I did think that the team we had out against Newcastle 1-11 wasn't too bad. I mean, I wouldn't have Dragishin there. I think Danso's a bit of a killer injury, but hopefully he'll be back in the next 2-3 weeks. But 1-11, that is a team for me that I think under another manager who the players want, they would have beaten Newcastle, because Newcastle, they couldn't finish their dinner for a start. They're shaky, as was shown when we got that equaliser. But the players, I think the players in the last 3 or 4 months minimum, maybe since the first day of Frank to some degree, have been playing about 20% off their maximum. They've been jogging about. You've heard me talk about it before. I've been watching Man United since Ferguson left, and the pattern amongst every manager they played for is on and off the ball. They just jog about, no movement. People are kind of really on this Carrick train right now, but for me, that's just going to be the same as Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. They're going to make the mistake of signing him up to a long-term deal, and then the players will drop off. What we need is a manager who's going to come in and get them playing at 100%, 110%, and that's why I think Pochettino, for me, is probably the answer. Like, a lot of people say, he hasn't changed since 2014. He's not a modern manager. But do I believe he will inspire those players? Yes, I do. The only other thing I wanted to say, just based on some of those things you were talking about, is one of the main reasons why I'm sure those players weren't having him is how many Instagram posts have there been? I saw Richalison did a cursory one this morning. Porro on the first day. Yeah. And after Ange, what were there? 25? There've been 2, 3 at a push. And so we know the players weren't having him. So on that basis, I'd say
the players don't like him. He literally said, I'm sure there's lots of players in the dressing room that don't like me.
The guy's an idiot. I mean, especially he said that on the same week when Poch did embarrassingly, I will say, did Jake Humphrey's high performance podcast. In that, I just don't think that's the podcast anyone should be doing. It's second only to Stephen Bartlett. But anyway, Poch did it. And the same week that Thomas Frank says, a lot of the players don't like me, Poch literally said on that podcast, oh, well, we get to the training ground at 7 a.m. and we speak to every player in the squad, and that could be for 5 minutes or an hour. Every day. And it's like, well, that is the difference. Now, I'm not saying I think Frank's a nice man. I think he's a good man. I think he'll be an excellent Crystal Palace manager when he gets that job in the summer. But that is the difference there. It's about the man management of these elite athletes who are paid millions and millions of pounds, like at a different level of millions of pounds to the Brentford players, and inspiring them to feel free and confident on the pitch. And you've seen it, Sean. There's been no confidence on that pitch for months. 100%. And I'm hopeful that if they don't totally buffoon this decision up on the interim, then they can get that kind of 10 or 15% back. But one thing I will add, because I've seen a few people in the chat, and I'm getting this in my chat on my channel all the time, when people speak about it should be Harry Redknapp. Harry Redknapp is the king of the jungle from I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. We've literally all watched him eat fucking kangaroo penis on live national TV. Are we not a meme club enough?
Well, yeah, that kangaroo penis was terrific, really. It was terrific. And I'd love it if we could get the band back together, bring in Jermaine, bring in Crouchy, a little bit of Nico Crencher. Yeah, we'll stay up, no problem at all. I'm there for if they want me, call me. You got my number, Tottenham. You got my number.
But people are forgetting that he was at Birmingham. He took QPR down. He was the Jordanian national manager, all since Tottenham. As well as I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, as well as, blaming his dog while he was at Tottenham for his tax fraud. All of this stuff that will add to the memeable culture. And he's 79 years old. So for me, Dilution 1981 in the chat, I would say his Harry all day. Well. And Sandra's sick, is she? Okay, so that's another reason. So I think, let's be realistic. It's not 2008 anymore. We all wish it was. But they can't buffoon this decision up. But Sean, let me ask you a question. Well, it's a statement dressed as a question. They will buffoon this up, won't they?
Well, yes, they will. But I don't know who's making the decision, Barnaby. And this is the
Peter Charrington.
Well, this is the problem.
That weird-looking dude.
This is the problem. Okay, so like I say, I've said a couple of times, over the last month or so, I've managed to managed to get a couple of people that are close to different things at the football club to be able to share some insights with me. Obviously, I've got a little thing with the guy in the tech DJ guy as well. Haven't managed to get his thoughts on this one, but the other people told me before Paul O'Keefe broke it yesterday. I spoke about this on Football Inc. yesterday morning. That it actually wasn't Vinay and Johan Lang that agreed to sack Thomas Frank. They had his back, right? And actually, it wasn't Nick Butcher. Well, it was Nick Butcher that made the decision, but it wasn't Nick Butcher.
He's the son-in-law, right?
He's Vivian's son-in-law, so Nepo baby, right? So crazy property guy, head of Tavistock or CEO of Tavistock, nothing to do with football. So who was it that gave him the oversight into that decision? It was allegedly, it was Matt Collicott, who is the revenue guy, who's been looking at the abacus, looking at the dwindling numbers, looking at the revenue coming in from matchday receipts and dwindling ticket sales, and saying we can't afford this to go any further. And it was him that had the power of veto over, or at least gave his advice. And Sharrington and/or Butcher went in that direction instead. Which is, look, I'm happy that was the decision that was made, but the fact that the powers that be that made the decision to overrule the only quote-unquote football people at the football club is terrifying. And here's the next part of that terrifying prospect. In the next 72 hours, Barnaby, Tottenham Hotspur have to make probably, arguably, the biggest managerial decision that they've ever made in 25 years. Because if they get it wrong, Tottenham Hotspur as a football club is, I don't want to be too dramatic, but I would say finito. Because there's never going to be a flash sale, a crash sale of every single player at the football club. The most senior player at this football club that will happily go down with the ship is probably Kevin Danso or Archie Gray. Everybody else will want out. Maybe the Oda Bears will stay around, but you're talking about horrendous amounts of forced liquidations. Yeah. Then you have to then build a squad that is capable of getting you back up. And that requires you to go and sign players that are championship level or low level Premier League players at best. But you don't sign them on 1 year, Barnaby. You sign them on 3 or 4 year deals. That's the way it works. So if you do come back up, you are then a perennial relegation threat every year, because it's not going to be easy to move those players on. You still only got 25 men in your squad, the disastrous revenue generation, the amount of money we owe on the stadium, it's catastrophic. And so if you have to make this decision by Monday morning, then you would hope that you would have footballing people that are making the decision. But in the last week, the only footballing people on the board have been undermined and overruled by non-footballing people around what to do with Thomas Frank. If you're not going to listen to them on Thomas Frank's survival or sacking, are you going to listen to them on who should come in and be the replacement? And to me, the answer is no. They're going to feel completely undermined. If that whole story is true, they're going to feel completely put out of joint. Yeah. And so who the hell is it that's going to be deciding between, as we're going to come to in a little while, the likes of Terzic or Rose or Robbie Keane, or apparently Carrick is an option as well. I don't know how that's going to work, but
Carrick long term.
Apparently, that's what I'm seeing this morning. So I've got this. I've got Twitter things that coming through to me 1,000 miles an hour. I'm just terrified that yes, the wrong people found the right decision with sacking Thomas Frank.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what's more terrifying, Barnaby. Is it the fact that the non-footballing people made the decision, or the footballing people wanted to keep Thomas Frank? Either way, we have the biggest decision of our fandom lives in the next 72 hours. And I don't know who's making the decision. And those that are, I'm not sure are qualified to. It's pretty concerning.
Well,
very concerning.
Let me add a possibility to you that I've spoken about on my channel a little bit. I think Joe Lewis is still making the decisions. I think Joe Lewis has come down from his boat, where he's got a tennis court on the boat, and he often moors it next to Tower Bridge, and he's just seeing off the end of his insider trading jail, home jail
probation
situation, probation, whatever. And I think he's gone down to his daughter and those guys, and he's gone, "What the fuck are you doing? This has to change." I think, and you've got to think about this realistically. Joe Lewis, it's his kids in charge, right? So he's still going to have paternal, charge of their thoughts to some degree. And sure. I know it's in a, what is it? It's in a bond or whatever it is, or a trust. Sorry, it's a trust. But I think he will have had to say, because whenever you heard from Harry or Jamie Redknapp down the years, they would always talk about, they felt that Joe Lewis had a lot bigger say than Spurs were given credit for, on the basis that Daniel Levy would take all of the heat. So I wouldn't be surprised if Joe Lewis had a say on it. and then those money people are having to listen to that as well. The other thing I just wanted to mention after what you said is
he's not a footballing guy, though, is he either?
No. He's not a footballing guy either. But they're all money guys. I mean, we're owned by literally and have been for 25 years by an investment fund. So every time anybody has ever said, why are they not putting their own money into the club? Because they're an investment fund. They're literally there to make money. That's what they're, we know all this. We know all this, right? But interestingly, of course, this is genuinely the first time where their investment is in real danger, as you mentioned, of going down the Swanee money-wise. So, that's why they're in a real hole, had to make that decision they didn't want to make. The other thing I just wanted to talk about is the madness that it was Paratici, from all reports, who was the first to be like, this manager isn't right. Like this man, and actually, do you remember he came out about 4 or 5 months ago and did an interview, I think in the Italian press, where he said, he was asked his style of football, and he was like, my style is that it's wedded to whatever the style of the manager is. And to me, that felt like a sly dig at the fact that he was having to try and buy players for a man who he didn't rate as a manager, who was playing a style of football that he didn't rate, for a club who literally have etched on the side of their new stadium, to dare is to do. And at the same time, Paratici's having to go to market and say, I'm looking for a big bustly man who can take a channel ball 95 times every match. And that, of course, it pissed him off. So as it became more and more clear that he wasn't holding the power in that situation because he couldn't persuade the board to sack Thomas Frank, he started talking to Fiorentina, and rightly so. Now, I'm not saying I think Paratici was the best sporting director of all time. He certainly had some wild...
Yards better than Johan Lang, though, right?
Yeah, I would rather have him in this situation now than whatever Johan Langer is saying, that's for sure. You have to throw in the caveat that I don't think any of us thought Gennaro Gattuso was a good idea as manager, and he did. But look,
two of the names that Tottenham linked with. Sorry, mate. Go on. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna finish by saying it's like, it is a bit like the rats leaving the sinking ship. Loads of people can clearly see from the inside that there is no clear line through the middle of this club that says, and it should be simple, shouldn't it? It should be simple, as in, we have to dare is to do written on the side of our stadium. Ange tried to dare. He did, but he didn't quite do in the way we needed. So we go to another manager who plays a style of daring football, but not quite as daring. You don't then flip-flop to the guy at the other end of the pragmatic scale, or as Ange called him, Dave Pragmatist. When Ange came out when he was manager and said, you just wait, their next manager, Dave Pragmatist, will come in and the fans won't like it. And he was spot on. It's like, you don't flip-flop. So they just have to find a through route down the middle of this club from top to bottom, where it's like, we are Tottenham Hotspur. The fans want to see us play a certain way. And let's appoint a sporting director who knows that. Let's appoint a manager who can do that. And let's appoint, just all of these money men have to wise up to this shit. And it needs to start now. And that's, again, I'll go back to why I think Pochettino is the right man, is because I think he can bring all of that stuff from the middle. I met a girl weirdly once in Margate who I was talking to in a bar, and I was like, what do you do? And she's like, I work at Tottenham. And I was like, oh my God, what's it like? She said, the only time where it has all been good at Tottenham was when Pochettino was manager, because he was almost like the positivity of energy. Poch talks about energy a lot, doesn't he? He started this energy positivity from the middle that seeped up even to Levy. To Levy. And that's why he's the only manager we've ever heard about how Levy went on holiday with him. And they had this amazing relationship. And that seeped throughout the club. And I think we need to bring in another energy positivity man. And I think, whatever the caveats are of, is Pochettino still as good a manager now as he was then? Well, he thinks he is. Fine. He may not be, but can he help us build again? And that's what we need to do. And we are at ground zero, Sean. We are at ground zero. Big time.
Well, ground zero might be in the championship in 6 months' time. We don't know. We got to get through the first phase is first. Just on the Pochettino thing, for me, I also think that people, you're right about the whole energy. And I think at the time when he came in, he was building off of the positive energy that Harry Redknapp brought in. Obviously, there was a little phase before Pochettino after Harry Redknapp where it sort of fell apart a little bit. Was it Villas-Boas?
AVB and Sherwood, yeah.
So there was that period in between. But generally speaking, we'd had some build from absolutely horrendous stuff. Then Martin Jol came in and started playing us. 100%. Martin Jol came in, started doing some great things. Then later on, there was a Harry Redknapp, which got us to the promised land, or almost got us to the promised land, Lasagna Gate. But the general trajectory was positive. Again, I had this giant blazing row last night with Stel presenting 25 years of ENIC failure. And I'm
Bell
like,
in a row, you say, Sean?
Well, listen, I was just as complicit in it, but it was one of those shows. That's what we do on Spurs 5. It is what it is. But
I like Stella, and I'm here for anybody who's as passionate about Spurs as I am, whichever way they show it.
Yeah, 100%. He's definitely a passionate man. But he represents a lot of the ENIC out people represent 25 years of failure, and I just don't see it that way. Because I think it's 6 years of regression from an artificial high that culminated with the Champions League final that was unexpected and massively beyond our realistic situation. And that unfortunately set expectations at this peak level. I always give the example. It's like buying Bitcoin at $125,000 a coin and then it crashing 50% in your face and you resent Bitcoin, but it was actually you that got sucked into the price point. You don't hate the asset, take more stock of where it is that you got sucked in at personally. But anyway, the Pochettino thing, I think that he was the fortuitous beneficiary of everything that came before it. I think the energy in the football club was great when he came in. It didn't start fantastically well for him, but he managed to get through that tricky period at the start. But I would also say that, there was the seasons at Wembley that we had that was something to look forward to. Playing in front of 85,000 people. We left the stadium at 36. Suddenly we're playing in 85,000 people games. Unbelievable. We had the Champions League runs. We had the new stadium that we were looking forward to. We had these wonderful players that we didn't sign any superstars during that period. We just happened to pick some fantastic young talent, and then they all kind of grew together under his tutelage for sure. Plus, we had Harry Kane that was emerging to be one of the greatest strikers of all time. Right? So I think that there was a lot of things that were outside of Pochettino specifically that were helping with that energy transition that you're talking about. And I personally don't think that anything like that exists at Tottenham Hotspur now. Pochettino can't come in and just click his fingers and it's all back together. I think that the rest of it has to be put in place again, and that's a slow build that he might be patient enough and the fans might be patient enough to go with him on, but he's going to need a lot of help. And I completely agree with you on the idea of continuity in the philosophy of the football club, which is where I will agree with the people that are in it out and always have been. One of the criticisms that they make, which is entirely fair and reasonable, is the pivoting from one theology, if you like, of footballing philosophy to another. No consistency. You don't stick with anything for more than a little time, and then you pivot from here to here, and you end up with a gazillion never-ending square pegs in round holes. 100% you need that. I think the other thing that you need is a relationship between a director of football and a manager that is co-symbiotic. I think they have to be on the same page. They will have their own different KPIs to work towards. The director of football is not tasked with the same things that a manager is. The manager is for here today. And the DOF is supporting that, but also thinking about tomorrow. And so if you always have butting of heads because the coach doesn't care about the 17-year-old you're buying, because in all likelihood, I'm only going to get 18 months or 2 years. And then so I won't be around to see that guy, which is, Ange Postecoglou sort of mentioned it.
He did,
with regards, though. That's why I always said Ange was going to be the guy before the guy, because, he inherited this philosophy of prioritizing youth, and he said these guys are going to be superstar players, and I hope that I'm here to be the beneficiary of it, but he wasn't. Thomas Frank hasn't seen that. I mean, these things take time. These players take time to sort of thrive and flourish. But I think you're right again about the Paratici. I'm just sort of responding to each of the points you made in turn here. I think the Paratici disconnect over the last 6 months was palpable. I think we backed, or the ownership backed the wrong director of football. There seemed to be a little click between the Danish house mafia. Paratici never wanted Thomas Frank. He wanted De Zerbi and he wanted Igor Tudor. And he wanted De Zerbi before Frank was implemented, didn't get his say so. Then when Thomas Frank started to have problems, he suggested Igor Tudor. He also wanted at Cluj. All three of the other guys went with the other team, and they went, let's go and get Paqueta. Paqueta turned us down. He went back to Brazil. Every time they've made a decision on who to back, they backed the wrong decision in terms of Vinay or whoever it is that's deciding those factors and facets. And that's problematic. And you know what? It stands true to reason now that they're regretting what's happened, because two of the names that are on the shortlist right now, Barnaby, are Igor Tudor. And by the way, I don't want him in any way, shape or form. He hasn't done anything for me that I think would satisfy me as a manager. And the other guy is De Zerbi. And I think De Zerbi's a walking car crash. It'll be fun for content, but he's not going to be the solution in terms of getting us out of trouble. Personally, I think the club, for him to work in a football club, I think he needs to be in a football club that has unbelievable ambition. He might be able to do well at somewhere that has an owner that wants to be able to go and splash the cash. But he's just a fiery lunatic. But in terms of, I'm kind of on board it because I think it will be fun. But now that the situation is so bleak with our future, I don't think he's the right guy to be brought in. But he's on the shortlist as well, Barnaby. I mean, does that not prove a point? If all of the things that Paratici wanted and they said no to, these guys are now the top of the shortlist outside of Pochettino. I mean, that to me is a testament to itself that they acknowledge that the mistakes that they've made.
Yeah, and a testament to how few options there are out there and where Spurs have fallen to a point where we can't attract managers who are in jobs, really. That's the reality right now. Can I just reference a little bit what you said about Pochettino and the fortuitous state he found the club in? I don't disagree with that, in that a lot of the players were there. One thing I would say, though, is what a lot of people forget, I think, and it is easy to forget, is that a lot of those players who were already there, a lot of Spurs fans were already cussing out before Pochettino came. And I will go straight away to Kyle Walker and Danny Rose as two examples. A lot of the Spurs fan base did not think those players were good enough to play for Tottenham Hotspur. And Pochettino, sometimes known as the fullback whisperer, whatever you say, is that he developed those players and got those players. I would also add in Moussa Dembele in that as well. Nobody saw Moussa Dembele as the king of the world when he started at Spurs. He was playing in a more attacking midfield role. Remember, he scored that goal, I think, was it against Sunderland? Hit it outside, left-hand side outside of the box into the bottom right, maybe on his debut. He was still more of an attacking player at that point. Pochettino saw in him that he would be right to play a bit deeper. And he also saw in Eric Dyer in that first season that Eric Dyer isn't a right back. Eric Dyer started at Spurs against West Ham away when he scored the winner in the last minute as a right back. And he was kind of known as a centre-back. And he moved him into that defensive midfield role in the first season before he brought Wanyama in. And what Dyer really did brilliantly in that first season was split the two centre-backs when we had the ball, give another option there so we could always get on the ball, get in possession. And one thing I'd say to Pochettino, and I'm not fully disagreeing in that he was certainly fortuitous when it came to Harry Kane, although I'd also argue he definitely made the most of Harry Kane and made Harry Kane believe in himself. He was able to develop players. And that I look at players that we have in this squad now, and you hear a lot of people, on the podcasts I like or in my comments saying how our squad is terrible. I don't think our squad is terrible. I don't think it's brilliant, but I don't think it's terrible. And I would look at players of the ilk of, I straight away think about Pedro Porro. And I think Pochettino will be able to get a tune out of him. I don't think Pedro Porro is ever going to be a Kyle Walker-esque defensive in terms of the defensive ability and recovering runs ability. But I think Poch would get Porro playing a far better standard of football than he has been certainly in the last 6 months. But of course, he has also been massively overplayed. So That's one thing I just wanted to mention about Porro. The other thing that you didn't mention this, but I'm seeing this a lot. So I wanted to kind of bring it up.
Sure.
The rest is football. All of these podcast people who are talking about how, the big problem with Spurs right now is the finances and how we don't spend enough money and blah, 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 and whatever. And then what they do is they compare to Arsenal. And it's been happening a lot. And Ange talked about it this week as well, which is why I wanted to bring it up on the overlap. He talked about Spurs will never spend £100 million on a player. That's bullshit, right? They won't now. And what's being forgotten about and not talked about when they compare us to Arsenal is how after Arsenal moved into their new stadium in 2006, they didn't spend big, by which I mean they didn't spend £38 million on Mesut Ozil until 7 years after that.
Yeah, and they were a selling club. Arsene Wenger worked miracles having to work within those financial limitations.
And they didn't spend £70 million, which is that day's £100 million, which they did on Nicola Pepe, and I think it was £75 million until something like 13 years after, 12, 13 years. So Spurs, unfortunately, and it is unfortunate, but we've got to handle it. We are in that spot now where Arsenal were having to sell their best players. And Levy was desperate never to be a selling club again. So what he did was he didn't spend a lot on wages to keep it down. And that means that also, unless we get relegated, we're not in danger of not being able to pay on our debts on the stadium. And the other thing that we need to all remember...
Covenants also are an issue as well, by the way.
Yeah, and we hate... It's almost like Spurs fans don't want to think about this, so it doesn't exist. We are the most indebted club in world football. We are. We have the most debt of any club in world football. Now, yes, we have a lot of revenue, so we're still able to spend money on transfers. But the banks, from everything I hear, don't allow us to raise that wage thing, which is what you're talking about there.
Yeah, the covenants are a thing. So certainly no one knows the covenants, right? We all speculate as to what they are. Simon Jordan talks about them a lot. I don't know if he's talking from a place of like insight or whether he's just speculating.
Yeah, because he's texting with Levy all the time. He's Bezzies with Daniel, yeah.
100%. But he never actually clarifies what the covenants are, but he never stops referring back to the covenants as being something of a consideration in that conversation. Just quickly, I agree with you on all those things. You know, I do. I think I've always defended Daniel Levy against what I consider to be unreasonable.
It annoyed me that Ange said it this week, because I'm just like, you know, Ange is a great, let me just say, Ange is a great storyteller, and a lot of what he said was true, but also I'd say a fair amount of it also came from a place of bitterness, and it was stuff that he had directly said the opposite of when he was manager of us. So frustrating in a little way.
100%. I called this out yesterday. Like, you have to always sort of question the motivations of the messenger. Who is it that's saying what they're saying, and why might they be saying it? Are they necessary? Are you just going to take them on their word and believe everything they say is gospel? Look, none of these people ever call out their football clubs. It's not just a Tottenham thing. A lot of managers, very few managers have positive things to say about the football club that they've just departed after they've been sacked. There's only a few managers that leave a football club in a nice way. Liverpool with Klopp because he retired or took a sabbatical. But most of the time, if you're leaving the football club, it's because you've been sacked, because at some point you haven't met the expectations. And then in an effort to self-preserve your own reputation, to make sure that you get a chance at the next big job, you want the world to know after the fact what you didn't have the stones to say during the fact, which is, it wasn't my fault. It was the people above me or around me that weren't pulling their weight and supporting me. I'm not saying that what he says isn't true. I'm just saying you have to consider that when deciding whether you or not you want to believe it. And I don't think what Ange said is going to change anyone's opinion. Those that want to hate on the owners and those that loved Ange will say, see, told you. And those that don't will say, well, hang about, maybe it wasn't just that stuff. Like I say, I think yesterday he mentioned the fact that Tottenham wouldn't ever sign a £100 million player. I think we will be able to sign a £100 million player. Financially, we will be able to get there at some point. And I wouldn't even think it would be that far away. I think the bigger concern within that conversation is, can we draw a £100 million player? If there is a £100 million player that is available to be purchased, we will not be the only person or the only team that are in for him. And the likelihood is that the other people that are in for that team are bigger and better and have a bigger draw and a higher frequency and a higher rationale and a higher opportunity of more trophies more often. Yeah. And those things are important. If it was all about money, everyone would be playing in Saudi Arabia. The fact that they don't says that money is important, and raising the wage structure is important, but it's not the only thing. Look at Tottenham with the case of Semenyo. Again, yesterday, Ange Postecoglou said, I wanted to sign Gahey, I wanted to sign Semenyo in the 23-24 season summer, Neto, by the way.
Yeah.
Neto, right? Where did Neto go? He went to Chelsea. Where did Gahey go? He went to United. Where did Mbumo go? He went to United. All of those teams have bigger draws, right? Where did Semenyo go? He went to Manchester City. And you know what?
I agree. I agree with this.
Reports, Tottenham are willing to pay £50,000 a week more to Semenyo than Manchester City were, and he still chose Manchester City, which again goes to the point that I always say, that I think that the people that want to just bash our ownership all the time, and it's more, I'm not trying to change anyone's mind or influence anyone, it's just my take, that there is an insular viewpoint where the problem is entirely within the football club and the solution is entirely within the football club. Yeah. And it used to be we don't spend any money. Once that changed, well, it's not the money spent anymore, it's how you spend it. And once that changed, it's we don't raise enough on the salary cap. We've raised the salary cap. We still can't attract those sorts of players. Because why? Because there's 5 teams in the Premier League that have always been more successful than us in the last 25 years. 3 of them have always been bigger than us from the time our football club was founded. And the other 2 came in and bought their success before the rules were in place to stop future teams from doing that. People don't want to look at that stuff. They're not interested in that context because it requires a little bit more of a kind of examination of the things that are happening outside of what's in your own control.
Yeah. Sean, shall I read this Fabrizio Romano tweet? Because people are talking about it in the comments about Igor Tudor. It's from 3 minutes ago. It says, Tottenham made contact with Igor Tudor's camp among interim managers being considered right now. Spurs planning for interim coach now and new head coach in the summer, with De Zerbi and Pochettino high on the shortlist. So they're looking at Tudor as a possible one to come in. And when the links came out this morning for Marco Rosa as well, I thought, are they trying to go to those kind of managers and say, this is an opportunity for you to have 4 months to prove that you could be a Premier League manager almost for somebody else?
Yeah. Look, possibly, but I tell you what, I mean, of the 3 names that I've seen, obviously if Igor Tudor is the number one kind of guy on that shortlist at the moment, not particularly impressed with what he's done, mate. For me, I just think that, you know, he does have big club experience. Apparently, the pros around him are he does excel at uniting teams and motivating players, which would certainly be a value. But he's got no Premier League experience. He's had personality clashes in the past. He's got a no nonsense approach, which may be a good thing, but it also may lead to conflict with players and stars that have that kind of willingness to be abrasive, like a Richalison, maybe like a Jed Spence. I'm not sure if that's going to work out. I don't particularly like his style of football. He plays a back three system, which utilizes wing backs. So he's kind of like from the Conte sort of school of football. But I'd call him fairly rigid and certainly fairly boring. Now, at the moment, I guess it doesn't really matter, right? If you're just looking to get yourself out of trouble, then maybe he's a better option than the other two. For me, Marco Rose. It's interesting when you look at Marco Rose, the people always talk about his failed stint at Dortmund. They don't talk about how brilliant he was at Leipzig and at Salzburg and at Mönchengladbach when he stepped outside of the RB model.
What happened with Leipzig, though? Why did he had a bad end at Leipzig, didn't he?
Yeah, it just didn't work out in the end. I think he when he went back there, I think he failed in the Champions League essentially, but he still had a relatively strong points per game rationale. He beat some big teams. But at Salzburg, he was unbelievable, and when he went to Mönchengladbach, he consistently got them competing, and beating bigger teams and competing above their station. Like I say, for me, I like him, but I still would have the same question marks about him as I would about managers like Silva at Fulham, Iriola, Thomas Frank. The thing I said about Thomas Frank before he came in was, you can lose 2 games on the bounce at Brentford and no one pays attention. You can win 3 games on the bounce and everyone's saying, oh, isn't Thomas Frank doing a good job? Do you remember how Iriola this season had them 3rd, 4th in the league right at the very start? 10 games, they were doing unbelievably well. And everyone was like, look at Iriola. And then suddenly you just didn't see Bournemouth at the top of the table. And they went on an 11-game losing streak that or 11 game without a win. We actually, Dr. Tottenham will fix it. We'll see you now.
Yeah.
But no one really noticed until about 6 games into that run that Bournemouth were falling off a cliff face. And it's because of the ability for those guys to fly under the radar, because they're not in a giant fishbowl. You come to Tottenham, the press rooms are busier. You've got more sort of national newspapers that are interested in what's going on. They're going to ask you more specific and difficult questions. Thomas Frank really struggled with that. Pochettino didn't. He was one of the guys that stepped out of that world and thrived. I'd have the same concerns about someone like a Silva, because at Fulham, he can go and do 3 wins on the bounce, but then lose 3 and no one pays attention. Same with Iriola, and I think the same with Marco Rose. And Edin Terzic is he's not a troublemaker, but he is someone that just wants to... He's had roles when he was at Dortmund where he was he was like player manager for a while, then he became the manager, then they even made a role for him as a director of football. They created a role for him. He sort of wants to be everything at the football club, so I don't necessarily think he'll work very well with a director of football. But
can I ask you a difficult
concerning?
Can I ask you a difficult question?
Sure.
I think probably the most difficult situation of the spot we've got ourselves in here is that, and let's take it as read that now we're going to get an interim manager because they want to hold out for Pochettino or someone else in the summer, right? So they've got to bring in an interim manager, but they've also got to bring in an interim manager who plays better football than Thomas Frank, right? However, because of the fan base, right? However, when they did that interview with Tim Sherwood, I think yesterday or the day before on Sky, and he was like, yeah, of course I'd do it. But look, first thing you got to say is it doesn't matter about performances in there. You just got to go in there and you got to get victories. You got to get victories or whatever. For me, is it a possibility that if someone like, let's say, Tudor goes in there as interim, because that's seemingly what the latest possibilities are, if he goes in there and goes, we've got to tighten this up, play 3 at the back, play defensively. I mean, not only are the fan base going to be still like, I don't think they'll give him much rope is what I'm saying, but also the players, I feel like, want someone to go in there and free them up. And that's not going to free them up. So it's a really incredibly difficult decision because none of these men, I mean, Rose, I think maybe plays a bit more kind of gegenpressy, slightly more exciting front foot stuff.
Sure.
But most of the others that are being talked about...
They call it Umschlaf football is what I think he's involved with, the transitional Umschlaf.
Yeah, okay, great. But most of the other names that they're talking about, even until you get to the likes of Harry Redknapp and Robbie Keane, and of course Robbie Keane's not going to come on an interim basis, that would be bananas. So it's really... like, no wonder people are basically spewing at Tudor because they're like, well, it's just going to be the same, isn't it? Just with an Italian accent. That's what people are worried about. Yeah,
look, I kind of agree with with Tim Sherwood, in as much as is right now the time to say free up guys and go for it, because you're obviously going to get exposed. And I think in this kind of day and age in the Premier League right now, the robotics of football have become that unless you're incredibly polished, well polished with your style of play, then you're going to get picked off by teams like Brentford that are super organized, disciplined, and then can just roboticize the kind of like the long throws from players like Coyote and just create opportunities where you can get picked off. And Tottenham, I don't think, have the time to bring someone in that can polish an attractive, possession-based game right now. So I'm kind of with Tim Sherwood because I'm terrified about the prospect of going down. I think, like I said before, we agree it will be curtains for the football club for a long time.
Sorry to interrupt, but why would the players then play any differently under a new manager asking them to do a similar thing? Do you see what I mean?
I think because you might. I think the motivation,
like his personality more.
I hope so. I'm not advocating for Igor Tudor. Like I don't.
No. I'm not talking about him necessarily. Even I'm just saying one of those managers. Like even if it was Tim Sherwood who was throwing his hat into the ring, and there are some fans, for some reason saying, maybe he's the answer. But if he goes in there and goes, we just got to keep it tight and try and hit them on the break or whatever, aren't the players just going to be like, well, we've been told this and we weren't interested in that already?
Yeah. Well, but I think that sometimes in life, I think you hit the nail on the head a little while ago. I think the new manager bounce sometimes is disguised as being managerial based. I think it's actually player based. I think that the players are just dropping their levels because they've given up. That first half against Newcastle United, I thought Jed Spence was an abomination in effort. And I think if he wasn't fit to play, he shouldn't have been playing. He should have put Sousa in. If he is fit and he just didn't care, then he to me is a personality. I think he's got all of the talent in the world. I think he could be a fantastic player, but I really don't like his the visible visual kind of demonstrations of how he feels. I don't like it, but I feel like if there's players like him in and around the dressing room, and again you pointed to the lackluster support or thanking, goodbye messages for Thomas Frank. I think that anyone fresh coming in, if they can come in, I don't necessarily think that the manager bounce will be because of a tactical shape. I think it will be because of just a new idea and a new personality.
Yeah, fair enough. Just one thing before I say, because you mentioned OK Jersey earlier, just to say to anyone who hasn't gone on okjersey.com and bought the 125 year anniversary FA Cup shirt, I have 2 of them and they are magnificent. So can recommend. Go to OK Jersey and get that limited edition. But I've got the long sleeve and the short sleeve, and they're magnificent.
Yeah, I was going to get one, but then I realised I'm a big guy Barnaby. I don't look like a snowman. I should never have chosen to support Tottenham because I can never buy the home shirt because white makes you just you
never had the kappa. You never had the slimline kappa one, Sean.
Well, maybe I did back in the day because I wasn't quite as big as I am now. But my 20s, my 30s, it all went to shit. They all went to shit with the diet and the lifestyle. Let me just quickly do a couple of these super chats, Barnaby, mate, and then we'll kick back in. Box Kev, always here, mate, always supporting. Big up to you, buddy. Thank you so much, my man. Early again for you over in San Francisco. You're an early riser, or are you just having a very early morning bladder session, mate? I know how it works with you. So same with me, buddy. Appreciate you very much, Box Kev. Thank you very much, my man. And please communicate with us more in the chat, mate. We'd love to get to know your takes on Tottenham in the WhatsApp group. Big up to you, Boxy. Thanks so much, mate. Absolute legend. We've got one from Craig. Oh, Craig. Hello, Craig. Become a new member. Craigie, reach out to me, mate. Message me on DM or tell if you've still got my current number. I change my number quite frequently. So message me, mate. Let me know how you're doing, buddy. I hope you're well. I see you moved home to the nice part of the Wirral. A lovely and a nicer part of the Wirral, I'm not sure. But anyway, mate, thank you very much for the membership, mate. Look forward to catching up, hopefully, on the fan phoning show this week or this weekend. Big up to you, mate. John Turney says, your dad is British, your mum is Japanese, living in Japan, working for a pro baseball club.
Nice.
That's why I asked John yesterday to give me some insight into why he's in Japan. Spurs fan since '86. Always enjoying your content, Sean. I appreciate the insight, man. Well, I'd love to go out to Japan. It's one of the only places in the world I haven't been to that I really love to go to see. Big up to you, mate. Thank you for your support. Sorry, Barnaby, you're going to say something?
No. All I was thinking was, I'd like to go out to Japan, and also working for a pro baseball club must be a laugh as well.
Yeah, 100%. Baseball is massive out in Japan, isn't it? It's absolutely huge, right?
Huge, mega, yeah.
Huge. Big up to Warren O'Driscoll. He says, look at the results when Frank had a fully fit squad. I don't think we can look at those results. Did he ever have a fully fit squad? I don't think he's had one. I think from the start of this season, the most amount of players we've ever had I think we've always had at least 6 players of our squad injured, up to 13. Yeah. So on that basis, I do have a little bit of sympathy and empathy for his plight. But listen, you have to make do with what you've got because you're getting paid £8 million a year and you're going to get an extra 15 on the payoff. So,
and also, I see a lot of the. Sorry to interrupt, but I see a lot of the teams that he's picked still being stronger than a lot of the other teams that are in the league. You know, I agree with what you said about, you know, they're playing too many games, so they're never going to be exactly at top, you know, lack of tiredness levels. But I do think the team and the players are showing a lot more have a lot more talent than they're showing. That's what I think.
Yeah. Someone who disagrees with you, Barnaby, is of course Sava. And big up to Sava, who's come in. He said, it's funny, no one seems to want to acknowledge how bad these players have been for 3 years. Over the last 120 games, we are 15th in the table. Why? Well, I think injuries
wrong managers and injuries.
Yeah. Listen, I think there's somewhere in between the two. Like for me, I look at certain players in the squad and I think you're more than capable. I think that Destiny Udogie, when fully fit, is a very good player, but he can't stay fit. So you might need to make a difficult decision on him. I think Pedro Porro went on it. Whenever Porro plays well, I think Tottenham play well. When Porro plays terribly, I think he is a barometer of Tottenham Hotspur. Whenever he plays badly, we play badly. Look at the fully fit back four, I think is more than fine. I think there's worse goalkeepers in the Premier League. Certainly he's one of the better shot stoppers, but he definitely doesn't make me feel satisfied with his decision-making.
Or distribution.
At the top end of the pitch, Sava, and distribution. At the top end of the pitch, I tend to agree, although I do think we have players there that will become good players if they can stay fit and injury-free, but we don't have enough superstar quality. We don't have anyone in the football team that's a star, do we? There's no... Tottenham have always had... James Flower said this last night, Barnaby. Tottenham have always had, you know, whether it's a Harry Kane or a Son or a Ginola or a Klinsmann or a Modric or a Van der Vaart. There's in every sort of generation of Tottenham, Bale, for example, there's always been a superstar or at least one in the football team. There isn't one right now, is there?
Agreed. No, there isn't. There isn't.
Big up to you,
Sava. But can I just also say, and big up to you, Sava. Good to see you, mate. I think Xavi Simons can become a baller. Can I just also reply to? I think it was Kicks TV in the chat asked me, you know, which teams are there that Spurs have better players than who are performing better than us. I watched Brentford against Arsenal last night, right? And I thought Brentford were 1,000 times better than Tottenham are at the moment. But I think man for man, Tottenham have a better squad and a better team than Brentford, potentially under the right manager. And I would add into that Brighton, I'd add in Crystal Palace, and I'd add in Leeds. They're above us at the moment. Quite a few of those teams, Fulham, just as examples. Fulham as well, who are well managed, well coached, but I don't think that they have better individual players than Spurs. So I think if we were able to pick a manager who isn't at the top end of the gung-ho scale in Ange Postecoglou or at the bottom end of the pragmatic scale in Thomas Frank, if we're able to pick someone down the middle who inspires those players to be as free and confident as they can be, then I think a lot of those players, and I noticed, you know, you talked about Benton, this guy, Kicks TV, talked about, I think, Bentancur being shit and Udogie being shit and Porro being shit. I disagree. I think they're all good. I think Udogie is a special player. I think Porro can be a very good player. And I think Bentancur is an absolutely fine Premier League level player if you're able to put him in a midfield alongside a good number 6 and a good number 10. I think ideally you'd have Bentancur as a good rotational option, to be honest. But I think he's an absolutely fine player. Like, for instance, that Brentford team I watched against Arsenal last night, they brought Jordan Henderson on. I would have Bentancur over Jordan Henderson other than on a leadership trip. So that's where I'm coming from. But it's subjective and everyone is absolutely allowed to disagree, and that's fine. But that's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you. I don't think the players are as bad as some people. You know, I think Sava definitely hates the standard of the squad, and a lot of people feel the same way as Sava. And obviously, look, the season's panned out to point in that direction. But I also think that a fully fit squad, of which Tottenham never have, a fully fit squad is entirely different to the squad that we're kind of putting together with band-aids and, you know, and sort of sticky gum or whatever. I don't think it's a fair comparison. If we're looking at, you know, our front three at the moment, whether that's Richalison, Tel, and Odebear, for example. You know, and saying, well, that's our front three. Okay, but if you were to pick the worst 3 forwards because everyone else is injured in the squad of Manchester United, if Mbeumo was injured and Cunha was injured and Sesko was injured, and you've got Xerxes, you know, like it's suddenly it's not as spectacular.
Well,
but we
have
Fernandes.
You take out Maddison and Kulusevski. You take out Fernandes. United wouldn't score a goal. So yeah, I agree with you on that. I really do. I do.
Big up to Loves Music as well. Big up to you, mate. Very generous. He said the head of the octopus, Enoch, is that a cancer sign? I think that's a cancer sign.
Looks like 69 to me, mate.
Because it's a bit of fun. That has to be removed if this once great club has any chance of existence. It's my 51st birthday today. Happy birthday, mate. Awesome. I'm not sure I'll make it to 51 with my lifestyle, but if I do, then hopefully you're having a good time, mate. And I hate my club. Oh, this do or die for Spurs. I do think this is the biggest weekend of the current ownership.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, who could, just a question to Loves Music, seeing as he was so beautiful to give that super chat. Which manager could Tottenham bring in today on your 51st birthday as an interim that would make you not hate your club anymore? Let us know in the comments.
Do you know, I heard rumors last night. I can't believe this is true. Right, I can't believe this is true, but the source that's brought it to me, I think he's in the chat right now. Big up to you, mate. Thank you for all of the insight you bring us from your position of noise, the position of access. He said that 100% confirmed that the meetings at the football club, or at the training ground, have suggested that they've asked Pochettino to go back and ask the American men's national team whether or not there can be some sort of dual role for someone within his team, like a Jesus Perez can come in, or he can be here until and then do the same thing, or to buy them out of the contract. Now, I believe him when he says that that's a conversation that's been had. You know, Pochettino's in London. I brought that last night on Spurs 5. He's in London right now, so it wouldn't surprise me if there had been conversations about that. But I genuinely do think that if Pochettino went and spoke to the head of the USMNT just 3 months before Donald Trump, there would be tariffs on England. We'd have Black Hawk helicopters flying in.
He's the worst man. Yeah.
Oh no, that Tottenham Hotspur, they're gonna get themselves some tariffs.
Brilliant.
Absolutely insane. I can't imagine it's going to happen, but apparently that's the question that's been posed.
But Sean, isn't this the third or fourth time now we've tried to get Pochettino out of various contracts since we sacked him?
Yeah.
He doesn't do it. That's his morals. He doesn't do it.
Is he? But for you, he's the right guy.
I think so. I also think there are, for everybody who says, he didn't win anything, I do think there are enough caveats for that. I think the fact that he wasn't able to spend any money, he was 10 years. You remember, Sean, that the whole idea with the Northumberland development project of regenerating the area, building the stadium, was the idea we would move into the stadium and then in the years after that, get into the Champions League. And and to be fair, Harry Redknapp, he was about 10 years, he bought Spurs 10 years ahead of where Daniel Levy expected them to be. And that that got Levy hard, and then he sacked him for Mourinho. Now, for me, for everyone who says he was 14th when he got sacked, that's true. But we would have finished that season in the Europa League spaces, at least, I think, realistically. And I think there are enough caveats as to why it should be Pochettino.
For the purposes of balance, though, because I think you and I probably both look at it from the same lens. I think we do, right? We're willing to give more rope towards the ownership, or Daniel Levy at least. I've never given a shit about Joe Lewis. You're never going to hear me back in him, and you're certainly never going to hear me back in the kids. The lipstick on a pig, the PR spin. I saw that a mile off and went, no, this is nonsense. Daniel Levy, I always felt was given the rope, and he was also the fall guy for the ownership that. He went and asked them for more money because he wasn't liquid enough. And they said, if you want it, they will dilute you. And obviously he decided not against that, which is him being greedy, I guess, in some regard. But what I would also say is, I think Ange did have a point last night. Again, baking in, I didn't care who said it, and I don't care what his motivation was. I do think that there is some truth to the notion that, the expectations that he placed on managers to compete on all fronts and to always be in the Champions League, but to also, you have to win a trophy. We have to get this monkey off our back. I need a trophy because I haven't got one up in 17 years and yada, yada, yada. I feel like the Tottenham, given the amount of wealth in the Premier League, given the amount of other people's access to resources, and given the fact that the PSR and the FFP rules didn't really stand up to any kind of real litmus test, I think Daniel Levy trusted the fact that those things were going to be more heavily enforced than they were, and they have been, and they haven't been. So all those things are problematic. And again, you can only control the things you can control. And Daniel Levy tried to control them, but ended up getting vetoed and getting the abstentions on certain votes by Chelsea, etc. Screwed the pooch. However, I do think there's some notion of truth to the fact that if you are asking Ange Postecoglou, or if you're asking Pochettino, or anybody in between, and Thomas Frank included, to be able to compete on all four fronts, and at the same time you're only giving them kids to work with in the summer windows, I do think that is an unreasonable expectation of Daniel Levy, or of whoever it was that was telling Daniel Levy here's what you can use, this is what we need. Daniel Levy, you be the messenger. Okay, Daniel Levy says to Ange Postecoglou, we need you to compete on all four fronts. Okay, what are we going to do in the summer? We're going to bring in Solanke and then 3 kids. I think that there's that in order for balance, I think that was unreasonable as well.
No, I think that's fair enough. I have to jump off in a couple of minutes. So what I thought I'd do is I just leave you with a little bit of a treat. Okay. Just before I do, guys, firstly, Sean, thank you so much for having me on the show, and for all of you saying nice things in the comments.
Loved it, man. Loved it.
For any of you who don't follow my channel, come to @BarnabySlater _ on YouTube. Give me a little subscribe. That'd be great. So basically, here's my little treat for you guys. A friend of mine does a lot of work with Harry Redknapp, and I've got a text from Harry because my friend messaged him and said, "Come and do it till the end of the season, Harry." And he said this: "I would love to have gone back till the end of the season, but I think they will make a long-term appointment. Not sure who it'll be, but can they get anyone in the interim? Very difficult to find somebody for a couple of months, especially as they're in trouble in the league. Hope you're well. Cheers." So Harry doesn't think it's going to be him. I think we knew that already, but from the horse's mouth right now.
Exclusive from Harry Redknapp.
Exclusive.
He's not ruled himself out, but he's sort of ruling himself out of consideration.
He would love to do it, wouldn't he? He would love to do it. But listen, thanks so much for having me on the show, and come on mine soon, mate. Again.
Mate, 100%. Reach out to me after the show, mate. We'll have to do this regularly, mate. Great chat. Great chat.
Love it. Come on, you Spurs.
Cheers, Barnaby. See you, mate.
Bye.